Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I have a really special guest on the show today. This is a woman named Tricia Huffman, and online she is called Your Joyologist, and I have known her for at least a decade. And she wrote a book called F the Shoulds, Do the Wants. Here is what the book looks like if you are watching this. Get clear on who you are, what you want, and why you want it. So we have a whole conversation about how the shoulds and shoulding all over ourselves can be really detrimental to our quality of life. A little bit about Tricia, that she really is a rock and roll roadie at heart. And by her first career, and when I met her, she was just getting out of that career, and she specializes working with those in the public eye to keep them in integrity with who they want to be while enjoying the life that they're living, which, trust me, because I've worked with tons of high-profile folks, that is a tall order. She's known for sharing real talk with heart, calling you to uncover and honor who you are, and empowering you to claim your joy daily via her social media, Claim It, podcast, Your Joyologist product line, Own Your Awesome daily inspiration app, and everything that she does. I really loved talking to her about this book. We both actually wrote our books at the same time, so we were celebrating before the interview, like, oh my God, we wrote our books during a pandemic. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy this interview with Tricia Huffman as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. I am so excited to welcome my friend Tricia Huffman to the Terri Cole Show. Hi.
Hi.
Look what I have.
I'm so excited to see it in your hands.
Right on. So, as I said at the top of the show, this is a friend of mine that we've been friends for a very long time. And she wrote an amazing book called F the Shoulds, Do the Wants. Get clear on who you are, what you want, and why you want it. So good. I just love it so much. It's so aligned, of course, with mental health and all the things that we both do all the time. So let's talk about your book. Why was it so important for you that this particular book, F the Shoulds, Do the Wants, be your first book?
Yeah, it's funny because, as you know, we both have been like, okay, we want to write a book. And what kept me from writing a book for so long is like, what will it be about? Meanwhile, this, focusing on the word should itself and the actual shoulds, is something that I started in 2008 with the sudden loss of my dad. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea when I stuck to this one thing of eliminating the shoulds from my life. I got this internal message of eliminate the shoulds, and it made no sense to me because I didn't live a life of shoulds. I didn't think. I was somebody who did what I wanted. I was living my dream life, touring the world with rock stars, getting paid for it,
right,
and doing what I wanted on my free time too. So it didn't make any sense. But when my dad died, I just had this, like, I have to change my life in some way. I felt like I wanted to wake people up to actually like living their life because I was miserable, grieving, but I would just walk past what seemed like majority of the people in the world, no matter where I was, and they seemed miserable. And I was like, you don't know what's going to happen. Your life could change in an instant.
Right.
I lost my dad. So anyway, I gave up my life. And all I knew is that I was done with the shoulds. And like I said, it didn't make any sense to me. But I really stuck with it, and I wouldn't allow myself to say the word. And so I would be in conversation and be like, what should? And would be like stuttering and looking around like, what do I say? Oh my gosh, like, wait. And that seemed like a small thing. It was probably gonna be like, what should we eat? Mm-hmm. What should we do today? But I just really stuck to, I'm not saying this word. And so I realized I needed a word to replace it. And I tried some different things on. And then for me, want ended up being the one that felt the best. And that small word shift changed my life so much, still to this day. And so when I finally sat down and I was trying to like think of all these things to write about, I was like, why am I not writing this book that I've been talking about for over a decade? Right. That in my product line, I've had the full word.
Yeah.
Of the shoulds. I'm like, am I allowed to cuss here?
Yes.
do the once. And so, yeah, it's been this daily impact thing that just paying attention to this word, which also then turned into this daily feeling, the feeling of shoulds, is something that even though I gave the word up over a decade ago, this is something that I am tuned into every single day. I still feel the weight of shoulds, even though I've eliminated it from my life. And so it gives me this constant guide point to look at, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I believing?
Right, right. Can you make a distinction?
Myself.
Yes. Can you make a distinction, though, for us, for people listening or watching, right? The book is really delineated into the shoulds and the wants. Can you define, what is your definition of what both of those things are?
Well, so my definition is the literal. First of all, it does, and I'm not saying I'm saying, hey, if you could do what I did and actually focus on eliminating the word from your life, and I will guide you to that, but also just to look at how much in your life you're actually doing because it's a should rather than a want. So yes, looking at even the language you're using. What should I eat today? What should I wear? What should I do? Okay, it's time to get to work. What should I do first? So these small moments of our every single day, and swapping that out with just simply, what do I want to eat? What do I want to wear? What do I want to do first?
Right.
And so just that swish of intention, but then also noticing it really is then what I notice the feeling or the invisible shoulds is, so I gave the word up, but I still feel it, is that I can feel in my body this outside pressure, this comparison, when I'm in a doubt, when I'm in a fear, when I'm in judgment, when I'm in expectation, when I'm in shame, I can usually always find a should that it's related to. And so that's how the book is yeah, it's all about looking at the shoulds, but it's so much deeper because by me tuning into the shoulds, I was able to get really aware of what I was thinking and feeling. And I'm comparing myself to so-and-so and their book launch or something, because it's I feel like I should have that, or I should have done that. So again, it's a way to pull me back into myself and to notice what I'm feeling, be able to nurture myself there, and also be okay, well, what do I want to do then about that? Or in my life.
It's so radically empowering to really change. That's what struck me about the book, Trish, is that it's so radically empowering to change our relationship to not just the word should, as you're saying, but to the notion, because immediately when I started reading the book, I was like, oh, whenever there is a should, right? We all feel it. We all know what it is. It's such a judgment. Like if I do something other than what someone thinks I should do, I'm doing the wrong thing. And what most of us don't do, my therapy clients, people in my courses, all of it, is we don't have clarity on what we want. Because if we were going to tie the shoulds and the wants into dysfunctional behavioral patterns, and we can and we do, shoulding has a lot to do with being codependent, with overstepping your boundaries, with other people overstepping their, your boundaries, or you doing that to them, where wanting is so much more solid. It's a decision, not a compulsion based on fear of abandonment or guilt, all these emotions. And again, of course, it doesn't mean we don't ever do crap we don't want to do, because we live in the world and we do. But there's a shift that, and you make this distinction really clearly in the book. So let's talk about, what advice do you have for people who feel shame and guilt for the past and keep getting stuck on what they should have done? The whole regret crowd. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah. And so that's what, it's again, bringing this awareness, because again, you might be like me and be well, I don't even live a life of shoulds, but it's so deeply embedded in us and in society that it's looking at all these ways it really affects us. And a huge one I feel that shoulds affect us is through should haves and this shame of what already happened. And it's of course, we have all likely done things. You might be oh, I don't have any regrets because I've learned from it or whatever. But at the same time, that doesn't mean may not carry shame or guilt for what already happened. And so I, would find myself having a memory of the past and then feeling this wincing or oh gosh, I can't believe I did that or I said that. I mean, it could even be a text message I sent quickly without thinking. And I should have waited. I should have said this. It can be that to something, wow, I really thought I was mature in my early 20s, and now I keep remembering this way that I acted, and okay. And so one of my favorite remembrances is seeing that when you're in a should have moment and feeling like how I should have acted, it's so easy to just pile more shitty feelings on top of the shitty feelings.
Yep.
So I'm feeling shame for this. I can't believe I did this. And or you just want to run and hide or forget about it, glaze over it. And what I think has helped me so much and helped my clients is looking at, if you're in a should have moment, then to acknowledge yourself, because that proves you've already learned, you've already grown, you've already seen how you would want to do that differently. And so instead of feeling shame for the past actions and guilt, to again be nurturing yourself. Like a lot of this book is of meeting yourself with compassion instead of being so mean to yourself about things. And so like looking at, if that already if I'm thinking I wish I had done this, to then be celebrating yourself, acknowledging yourself, nurturing yourself, but like, okay, that already happened. That happened and that's how I acted. That is the truth. And if I'm looking at it, I wish I had done this instead. I should have done this. Wow, I've grown. Even if again, if it was like, okay, so I sent that text message really rashly. So then you can also look at, well, what do I want to do in the future?
Yep.
Because you can't change what already happened.
Yep.
So we're now, okay, so I've learned that to not respond quickly to text messages. So in the future, I'm going to give myself this waiting period, or I'm going to talk it out loud to myself if I get something that triggers me or something like that. So finding ways to support yourself for the current you and the future you, instead of just beating the past you up.
It's so true. And it's so pointless, but it's also really damaging, right? If it didn't do damage beating up past you, then we wouldn't be talking about it, right? It's pointless. You know, my mother, I gotta say, for a country bumpkin, my mother always had, like, she would come out with some wise things where I would be like, oh my God. And she, growing up, she would say, regret, jealousy, and something else are wasted emotions. You can't change the past. You can make a decision now. You can change the future. But it's like beating your head against a brick wall. And that really stuck with me, in that rather than some parents who would want you to be in like guilt and regret, my mother was like, oh, don't waste your precious life. So moving into, what tips do you have for figuring out for people making decisions? Because I feel like the regret cycle can come from, a lot of times, and a lot of my clients struggle with indecision, struggle with being so afraid to make a mistake that they get like analysis paralysis. And in the book, you talk about like being able to make the distinction between what is your intuition, like your intuition voice, and what is your fear voice. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I think, in my chapter about intuition, I'm very clear that like we make up intuition to be like, it's going to be this like clear, like ringing bell, like you get lit up, like you just know. When really I find that our intuition is like really muddy and confusing. And so because of that, we can often be like, wait, is that my intuition? Is that what my gut's saying? Or is that just a fear or a doubt or what? And I do think that a lot of us has to relate to, again, the shoulds, that we aren't used to checking in with what we want. Because fear of what other people will think, fear of failure, fear of being judged, all of these things in comparison. So I think that muddies our connection to our intuition and ourself. But one thing, again, like me trusting my intuition, again, after having years and years of doing this and like unshooting myself, it can still feel murky and scary. And so myself, even I've had to like, how do I figure out if this is like, even saying no, like, well, is this a fear? Am I just saying no because I'm afraid of that? Or like, no, I really just don't think that that's the right thing for me.
Yep.
So looking deeper. And so I feel like when we get quieter and we can ask ourselves again more what we want, but also when you look at the energy of the feeling and look deeper. And even for me, it helps to like envision the like outcomes of things and like notice, like, do I feel excited even though there's fear? Or like you can just feel more like dread in your body or
Yes.
aliveness, even though fear is present. Because also I talk about like we often are feeling more than one emotion at once.
Mm-hmm.
And so being okay with that, but like noticing like if there's joy and if there's curiosity, or if there's, you just feel the intuition more as a solidness inside of you. Whereas fear, I can feel fear and doubts. It's more like in tension in my shoulders and in my neck and in my stomach. So again, like when you get used to looking at the shoulds in the year one, it gets easier, but then also just allowing yourself to actually feel deeper into your body, you can start to feel the energy that's different within that. And also just trusting yourself. It's a lot of, you know, the shoulds and the ones is learning to trust yourself, and also knowing like, yeah, sometimes you might just not actually know, and you're going to make a choice. And then you'll figure out, okay, that wasn't for me. Oh, okay. And then again, instead of going, oh, I should have said no, or I should have done this, then it just, you collect it into your like knowledge base of, all right, so I did that and that didn't feel right. And so now I know.
Exactly.
It's for me.
Exactly. I love the making the distinction between the energy of the feeling. And with my clients, I would always say, listen, fear also doesn't always mean abort, right? It's like you can feel, and I rename it, I call it anticipatory excitement, because that can feel a lot like fear. Your heart might beat more, but that doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to do the thing, right? It means that could be the enlivening or the exciting piece that you were talking about, but it does take exactly what you said. It takes getting quiet and not feeling like, oh my God, I must make this decision right now. If you are unsure, give yourself the luxury of time, as you say in the book, and go in, dial in to what is the quality of the feeling. And that really is where all the answers are. And I know it's so easy for us to want to be like, I'm going to ask 10 of my smartest friends. And yet even your smartest friends don't know what's right for you more than you do. So tell me a little bit about in your practice and what you've been doing, because you're a coach and you do lots of stuff and you've got this amazing line of loot, as I call it, or merchandise that is great and fun. I've got a bunch of stuff at my house. What do you see are the most common ways that you think that the shoulds are holding people back in their lives? Where do you see it the most with your clients?
I feel like most people don't trust themselves, and they don't give themselves a chance to even get to know themselves, really, because again, they're just resorting to what society, what their parents, what their friends, what people, you know, have told them they should be. And again, this feels like you don't know that you have been living this way. It's not as if you were like, no, somebody sat me down and gave me a talk about how you should be. It's just collected information from the media, you know, from social media now, that we are constantly exposed to so much. And so then our brain takes it in as this is what we should look like. This is what we should be. This is the way, you know, how we should be a good friend. And all of these things that we don't realize that we haven't actually been getting to know ourselves, but the version of ourselves that we've been told we should be. And so,
which is terrifying, because then in the end of life, you're like, wait, hello, whose life did I live? You know, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I don't remember what I was going to say now.
Welcome to my life. Literally my entire life.
I'm so present. I don't know where I was.
So in the beginning of the opening line of chapter 7, you say, so much of our lives are driven and dictated by fear of being judged. This fear is one of the biggest things that holds us back and robs us of our joy. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. And again, this is like with, I think, you know, being like the self-worth and trusting ourselves is that, yeah, I just realized, and again, this is how it affects me mostly on a daily basis, is that I can find myself holding back in so many different ways because of this fear of being judged. What other people think of me. So again, we don't realize that most of the ways that we live our lives is not what do I think about me? What do I want? But what will people think about me if I wear this, if I say this, if I do this, if I have this much money, if I drive this car? It's like we're constantly outwardly judging ourselves, but thinking that inwardly. So we're judging ourselves, but we don't realize it. We act as if the world is judging us.
Yes.
Everyone's going to judge me if I do this or do that. But what I realized is, because I was living that way, those were my own thoughts. And I think it's in that chapter I share this moment from being like about to do a photo shoot in New York City. And I was so excited about this photo shoot. And I had these handmade signs, and I was going to go meet a friend who was a professional photographer. So I was like scrappy, but getting it done. But, and I was about to leave, and I was frozen in fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on the sidewalks in New York City, very visibly having my photo taken. What are people going to, they're going to be like, who is that girl? She's not pretty enough to have her photo taken. She's not thin enough. She's not like important enough or cool enough. So in a split second, all of these judgments came up that everyone was going to think about me. And then I was like, wait a minute, Tricia, you're still standing alone in your apartment.
Right.
Those are your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, are those your judgments of yourself? Mm-hmm. And it sucked to see that was me judging myself for me, because I wanted to believe that, I'm this big self-love person. I already am, known as a joyologist. That was the beginning of, I don't know, it's a constant journey of embracing the humanness that we have, and that there's not really maybe ever going to be this overcoming of self-judgment, but this constant awareness of when I catch myself in a judgment or a fear of being judged. So then I again come back to, is that really what I want to believe?
Right.
So seeing that I was judging myself sucked, but it also was very freeing. And it still is, that on a daily basis, I will go to put on an outfit and then look in the mirror and think, because of the programming of how I should look,
yep,
and how I was raised in diet culture and the media and everything, that still almost on a daily basis, I judge myself for my physical appearance, for not being thin enough, for not having my hair put together enough, whatever it is. And so I catch myself in that judgment though, and then can ask myself, is that really what I want to believe? Because there might still be an actual belief that, I don't meet this body type that I was sold that I should be. But even I get to just question that. And that's what I teach in that chapter of is that what I want to believe?
Right.
Do I want to believe that I don't have value, that I'm not allowed to wear this outfit that I like out in the world because I don't look like the model in the picture? No. And so we're constantly setting ourselves free by identifying our own judgments and seeing, people are going to judge us. But the worst judgments are the ones we're carrying around on our own, not realizing it because we just want to pretend it's the world that tells us we can't be ourselves and love ourselves. It's yourself that's keeping you.
Wow, that is so profound, though, that realization itself. Because how much of the time do we talk about what they think, in quotes? I mean, they, who is the collective they, when it's really that inner mean committee or that inner judgmental committee and it's projecting our fears of inadequacy, or like you said, the programming out onto the world as if it's true. And I love this idea that you can stop sort of mid-thought and go, hey, do I want that to be true? Because here's the thing about truth, and you say it very clearly in the book. I mean, listen, this is subjective. This is there really is no truth with a capital T, because we all come, as Don Miguel Ruiz would say, from our own, I think I paraphrase his thing, but we're all coming from our own nightmare, so to speak, in the Four Agreements, where it matters the way you were raised, the culture, the country, all of those things impact your shoulds. So your shoulds and your wants are very different, are very unique to you, right? Just like your fingerprints. I love this quote on page 58 because it's just so true. So I'm just going to read it and you could tell me what inspired it. Sometimes shitty stuff just happens in life and you don't have to try to figure out the reason for it, and you don't even have to find the lesson in it. Sometimes it just sucks, and I don't want you to make it suck more by shaming and blaming yourself. Fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, well, even what I was going to say too, with when we catch ourselves judging ourselves, again, I'm teaching hopefully self-compassion in this book too, is that again, we could then go, oh my gosh, I'm such an asshole, or I'm not whole enough or evolved enough or whatever, because I caught myself judging myself. And instead of just meeting yourself with compassion. So again, the piling the feelings on top of the feelings. But so also, you know, things happen in life that shouldn't happen.
Yes.
Shitty stuff happens every day.
Yep.
And that quote was inspired from a friend who was going through a really terrible time. And there was part of her that was trying to, like, you know, she was aware of how terrible this time was, but okay, she was like trying to support herself and nurture herself through it. But there was still a part of her that was trying to figure out why it was happening to her. Like it was karma, like it happened because she was nice to someone and someone took advantage of her. And so she was like, I shouldn't, you know, like those sort of I shouldn't have done. And I was like, what? You're blaming yourself for this thing that is a terrible thing. Like that is not your fault. And so I think that too, that can be a problematic thing in the self-help and positivity world, is like always trying to find the meaning in something and always trying to find the good in something. And that I don't feel like that really helps. And also like, yeah, like why did this happen? What did I do that? And like, sometimes the getting there, like why is part of the book and like why you're feeling this. But I'm also clear, if you don't, no. If digging for the why is going to make you spin more, don't do it. So sometimes looking at why is this happening is not going to help you, and just be like, wow, this thing is terrible. So how can I nurture myself and support myself through it?
Yeah, I that is so, the wisdom in there's not always an answer, and it doesn't matter, right? Sometimes, as you said, terrible things happen in life. And I really do think, especially in our self-help and sort of the spiritual space, people can be very judgmental about things happening and being like, that's a part of your shadow. I'm like, ugh, stop. Just stop. You know, my 18-year-old niece was killed very tragically. You know what? That shit has nothing to do with anything other than what I believe is, you know, this was her agreement when she came here. But it's very painful. And part of the people looking for the why, wanting to understand the why, is like the brain. We always want to have like concrete answers. And it's hard to stay in the not knowing. But I love that you put that in the book, because I think it's really profound to also accept that sometimes just bad crap. Remember that book, you know, when bad things happen to good people? Mm-hmm. That was like in the, I don't even know, the 80s maybe? I mean, that has always been true. And yet, if there's something that I did, of course, for a moment you look and go, not when someone dies tragically, but for a moment you look and go, when crappy things happen, I will always look and say, hey, what was my piece in this thing? But I always also leave it open to the fact that sometimes crappy things happen, and the regretting or the shoulding, right? If I hadn't left the office at that time, then that thing, right? Going back and just torturing ourselves, which of course is exactly why you wrote this book and what you're talking about in this book, which is don't waste your precious life force energy, your amazing, one of a kind life on making yourself feel terrible. Someone told me this quote the other day, and it reminded me of your book. Don't make the pain more painful.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And that's what, like, in the book too, I'm saying, like, to live your most aligned and alive life. So you're being present to what's happening instead of like, oh, I should be this, or I should feel that or that. And I think that quote is earlier on, but there is a later chapter too, where I am talking about like accepting, like, for me, you know, another part of like when bad things happen or shitty things happen, what I do and what I see now, shoulds, like, you know, you could think like, I think of should as a dirty word, and people are like, oh no, don't say that word around Tricia. But what it's become to me is sort of like a yellow flashing light, a place for me to be present, be aware. Oh, a should's here. I feel it or I see it. And so even like, yeah, when, oh, this shouldn't be happening, or like the pandemic happened and stuff, like when your flight gets delayed, you know, and now you're going to miss your friend's wedding or whatever, like whatever the thing is, your friend gets cancer, no matter big or small that disappointment is, for me, like, you know, also just accepting that it's happening, choosing that, like, okay, well, that's what's happening, is some way I get out of it. So instead of like, this shouldn't be happening, you're right, it shouldn't be happening, this sucks, I prepared, I did this, I did all this right, we should be doing this, the plane should have, you know, we can go into all these other shoulds, but just saying, okay, this is what's happening. Right. And you know, too, that's a like positive spin mantra, which works for some people, and I think works for some occasions too, is this idea of like, oh, it didn't happen to you, it's happening for you. For me, I just like to choose, it's happening.
Yeah.
Like the for you could be great, but I don't always think that that's going to benefit. Like, oh, my friend getting cancer is happening for me. Perhaps in hindsight, for sure, you going through a hard time is going to teach you lessons.
Sure.
Right? It might bring you closer to your friends. So in hindsight, you might be able to see some good in that terrible situation. But when you're faced with a hard situation, for me, it just is like, well, this is what's happening. So again, so how can I move through it? How can I add joy to my day? How can I nurture myself? How can I, you know, serve myself more while this thing is happening? Because it's it's happening.
Right.
I can't change that.
What's interesting, though, is that what you're talking about by being in acceptance of what is in the moment and not going into all of the down the rabbit hole spiral of why it shouldn't be happening, is that rabbit hole spiral is like denial. It's like resisting the acceptance of what is. And it doesn't change what is, but it does prolong you in the painful place. So I love the idea of kind of getting solid in this is happening, and how do I want to make my way through this? Not what should I do, right? How do I want to make my way through this? There was one other excerpt, and then I want you to talk about where people can find everything, but there was something else that I loved. You wrote, each day from morning to night, as I navigated from shoulds to wants, I had this arm-pumping feeling soaring from me that I'm allowed. And then you list them. I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to wake up when I want. I'm allowed to skip yoga today. And there was a whole bunch more of those. But there was something when I read that, I wanted to, pump my fists as well in the power of giving ourselves permission. So how did that come about, or what inspired you to sort of write that piece?
Yeah, well, so that was like, so again, back to like when I first gave it up and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I gave up my career and I was just like, okay, I'm just giving up the shoulds. And when I got to one, and so again, there was a lot of these small like moments of the day and like, oh, I should get up because if I stay in bed past 9, that means I'm lazy. That's a like, whatever. But why I can do whatever I want because I'm not working. It's like, again, these small things. And then like, yeah, I'm allowed to stay in bed. Oh, I should do yoga every day because that's like what a good yoga, like we find these ways to make everything harder and be meaner to ourselves. And saying, oh, wait, do I actually want to do yoga today? And then, and in the book too, there's ways to work through, yeah, you got to do things in life that you don't want to. So how can you find the ones in it? But like, yeah, no. And it just felt so freeing that all of a sudden, like, yeah, I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to do this. And again, it was mostly coming from these small things, but the small things are what make up our lives. And it really just felt so freeing. And it still do when you make that shift from should to want. I mean, the energies of should feel like I always feel like my shoulders are caved in. I'm like clenched. Like, oh, what should I do? And you're looking around. Want feels like so much more solid and your shoulders are back. Like, what do I want? And it felt so freeing to like remind myself, I am allowed. Like, who is making these rules that I think I should be following and then being mad at myself for not? And even too with like, when you talked about the chapter 7, I think with the judging yourself and how we're stealing joy from ourselves daily, the small stuff, again, I realized that these were some things that took me some years to uncover. I used to judge myself because I liked to read novels. Because I was like, oh, now that I'm in like personal development world, I should only be reading like educational or other self-help books or whatever. And I have always loved reading memoirs and novels. And so then I was carrying the shame around it and like, wait, no, that nurtures me. That makes me come alive. That is the way I can be super present and like tune out to things. Like I want that. I'm like, wait, why am I being so hard on myself? I'm allowed to like novels. I like Justin Bieber's music. It took me a long time to be able to admit that. I should not like his music. I am, I grew up as a rock chick. Or like, wait, I'm now 40. I'm 41. I can't like I shouldn't. So like, wait, even that song, like, but no, I actually really like to dance to that song, and I think it's great, and I think he's great, and like, why am I not allowing myself to like the music I like? Why are you not allowing yourself to wear the clothes that make you feel like, oh, this is fun, because, oh, it might not be flattering? Where are you not allowing yourself to do things that bring you joy because you're afraid someone else will judge you when it's you judging you? It's so messed up, Terri. We are so messed up.
Oh, the human species. This book is called F the Shoulds, Do the Wants by my pal, Tricia Huffman, otherwise known online as Your Joyologist. Get clear on who you are, what you want, and why you want it. This is what it looks like. It is coming out in a couple of days, but you can pre-order it right now and get some juicy bonuses. You want to tell us what people get if they pre-order it right now?
Yeah, you get immediate access to a 5-part bonus video series where I do go into more detail and offer more support about some, like 5 of the biggest shoulds I think that we struggle with.
Yeah.
You also get a ticket to a live virtual book release party and workshop where my friends Robin Euclid and Jason Mraz are joining me. He wrote the foreword to the book. And then also an exclusive tapping meditation from our friend Jessica Ortner to help yourself unshould yourself and connect more with your wants.
I love it. So people can buy the book everywhere that books are sold. Your website is triciahuffman.com.
Yeah, and the book page itself, you can go directly to ftheshouldstdothewants.com to take you to where to get the bonuses and everything.
Ooh, I love it. Well, I'm so excited for you, my friend. I do believe you have written a really amazing book. To be continued, you guys go out and get F the Shoulds if you want to F the Shoulds. I sure as heck am happy that I did. Let's say to be continued. Thanks for spending so much time today, Tricia. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you and love you so much. Thank you.